This conference will now be recorded.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and do item 1 on the agenda, and then we'll make an introduction of our guest this evening. Item 1 in the consent agenda has A, B, and C. It has the extra item to approve the minutes from the special meeting. Unless anyone has a specific question about one of those items, I'll hear a motion to approve consent agenda item 1. Or item 1, the consent agenda, I should say.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to accept the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Malat, a second from Councilman Shriver. Will the clerk please call roll?
Adcox,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Shriver.
Yes.
We're going to move on to item number 2. Any comments or requests from the public? Moving right along. Item number 3. Actually, we will go ahead and introduce our special guest this evening. Senator Gossage has joined us to give us just an introduction and the updates that she would like to share. And so the floor is yours if you're ready.
Great. I'll stand over here.
Oh, right at the microphone's fine.
Oh. Okay.
Then everyone online can hear you.
Is it on?
Yes.
First of all, yes, Senator Beverly Gossage, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. For some of you don't know, I'm currently the senator for Senate District 9. And District 9 currently is Olathe, and then DeSoto, and the northern part of Gardner. But starting in the primaries, August 6th, what you'll see on your ballot will be reflective of our redistricting that we did 2 years ago. The House members moved into their districts 2 years ago immediately because that was the first time they were up for re-election. The first time senators are up is every 4 years. So this is the first time we'll be running in our newly expanded boundaries. So District 9 will move over to the west and expand into Edwardsville, Bonner Springs, and then Tonganoxie, Linwood, Artificer, Eudora, and Baldwin City. The only thing that I'll be losing is the part that I had in Gardner, and then there's this part, just a little bit of Olathe, but otherwise it's greatly expanded geographically. So I've been doing a lot of walking, and you see me in my walking clothes today. If you see something that was dropped at your door, I appreciate that very much. Just to kind of, so that people in Edwardsville know who I am. My children all went to school in DeSoto. I live in the country between DeSoto and Eudora. I lost my husband 3 years ago, and my children now kind of scattered around the country. They're in Arizona and California and Missouri, and so not really around here all that much. I'm the grandmother of 5 and a half, so the new baby here coming before long. I serve on multiple committees. If you look on the literature that I gave you, if somebody didn't get, I have a few with me. But because my background is in education and childcare, but also I've been a health insurance agent for 20 years trying to help people find affordable coverage. So I help people on Medicare and root plans. So if you look at the chairmanships, it just makes sense that I chair the Senate Public Health Committee, the Bob Bethel Health Committee, childcare, foster children, homelessness, mental health, suicide. I chair 7 different committees. I'm in vice chair, I think I'm 4. So you asked for just a brief update of what's going on. You probably all know the governor has called us back to a special session on the 18th. It's difficult because this is the time when legislators book their vacations. So you've got some people who aren't going to be there, and you've got others who are leaving the next day, and some who are coming back yet. Just makes it really, really hard. You may have also heard, so what's the special session called for? Because 6 different times we passed a very large bipartisan effort tax bills, but the government hasn't been taking it. So we help people in something. One of those 100% of the for rescinding votes. So that you know, when the governor vetoes something, they need 2/3 of the votes, that would be 27 votes to be in the Senate side, and 85 in the House side. So what has been happening is that one understanding that all these votes were that bill, but then the governor of the bill didn't have enough votes to override the veto. That's so we'll see what happens. We have to use also, I have not given much information on this, the possibility of the chiefs looking to go to Kansas, potentially in one of that county, which is not really know. I have a lot of reservations about that. I know a lot of that is shortly being pulled on both sides. I don't understand government out of the now, so I like to be able to see. We're not picking on the top grocery store at a special concession on how we're going to pay. I don't know how much Edwardsville, $100, and promise economic growth. That's what we see. So it's going to be a big water. Then you can decide as a chair when you have a hearing. Five out of 9 votes on that bill at the committee, and it goes back to the board. And it keeps this big long list. I know that they these past committee. Then there's a line drawn on the original list. That's called the Article 1. And these bills were on the second floor. And first of all, we give a caucus, and that's presented by the chair, and then we go back to the Senate floor, it's presented again by the chair to everyone, and then we'll take a vote on that. And once it's voted on, if we get enough 21 votes, then it goes over to the House side and starts all over. It's a very long process that we do in a short period of time. So people can get very frustrated about what happened to that bill. That's all the bills that got passed. Why is that? That's why. But this takes a very long process and all along the way that amendments that are brought in, those have to be through conference committees. But if you go, and I'm thinking that most of you probably don't receive my newsletter, but I'd be happy to give you my email, edwardsville.com and sign up. And then you can get the newsletter and know what's going on. And to keep up to what's happening in the community. Newsletters that we do. That's kind of short, but I hope that that was okay. Did you have any questions of me?
No. Okay. Well, just to comment quickly, Senator Gossage was thoughtful enough to be supportive of our sidewalk initiative and send a letter and support of grant funding for that. And so she's already being a part of our community and supporting projects going on that was overwhelmingly supported by our residents. And so just wanted to take the opportunity for thanking you for that.
It just made sense.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here.
And I hate to come in and leave, but I have to be attending the Medora City Council Commission meeting, and we're talking about that pedestrian bridge that's going across K10, and I have some updates for that. So
Very
again,
good.
Joy to be with you all today. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 3 on the agenda. Consider a request to accept FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program funds and authorize the expenditure of city-required matching funds for the purchase of 2 backup generators for the use at City Hall, the Police Department, and the Community Center.
Mayor, thank you. I'll call on Chief Tim Whittle to give the presentation.
Mayor, council members, we're invited to consider the acceptance of FEMA grant for the acquisition of backup generator. In 2023, I was tasked by the then city manager to apply for hazard mitigation grant funding as a priority placement for backup generators for the city hall / police station and the community center currently do not have any form of backup generator power. At that point in time, we were not awarded on a priority funding project because other projects met our priority funding. On May 31st, we were notified that there was leftover funding, and we were then awarded the process potential to be awarded by financial funding for this grant project. Part of that grant funding was to go back and resolicit the original bid from the grant project. I then contacted the current city manager and we discussed looking at the generator project and went back out to the grants to look at funding the generator project to upgrade the generator set for the city hall police station project to be incorporated into. Is it going to be a gen pack set large enough to either fund with the power the proposed town center site, or to eliminate the need for a complete whole generator and set there and offset some of the costs for future development. The project, as long as we set it there and ensure that we did not move the generator, maintain the maintenance of it at the original placement. Also, we asked for a variance in that we were not securing the generator or doing any type of fencing around it because the proposed town center project are not reflected in the grant. The grant project price came into $128,300 as you see on the agenda for the quote attached agenda. Our local share of 25% is $32,075. City manager thesis fund that we could allocate such funding from the facilities fund, which has more than sufficient balance. At this time, the city staff recommends that we accept a 75-25 federal grant funding match of $32,075 out of the facilities fund for the city. Start the process to update the paperwork sophisticated, which has a July 19th deadline. We will then proceed forward with selecting the vendor of Generac out of Tennessee, Missouri. Start the process of having the generator installed, and then we'll work forward with the process of having the generator installed. Any questions at this time with the application project parameters or anything else?
What is the lifetime of these generators?
Usually about 30 to 35 years of annual maintenance on them. So they will last a lot longer. We have one existing in the fire station now that's 35 years old. It's an indoor generator set under power voltage. So these are outdoor. They'll be fed off natural gas, so they will be maintained and they're completely enclosed. So long as they will be on there, they're expected to be 30 to 35 years.
So this will be set up and then have to be relocated when,
Yes, ma'am.
What
So
is-
temporarily, it'll sit between here and PD about 25, 30 feet between the two. There's about where approximately a green telephone tower box is, and telephone box. And then as the development town center is chosen by the city hall or the city council moves forward, then it will be worked with architectural firms to where they will place it at. Then they will be designated to work with the generator company to place that generator in their design. And then after they have built that facility, then it will move after we are ready to move in. They will have the generator company relocate this generator set over to that facility and they'll simply store it back.
So that's no obstacles. Gotcha.
There will be no obstacle there. At that point in time, we'll have to secure the generator with some sort of fencing, whether it's a privacy fence that's secured or a chain link fence that's secured, or we put it in a secure parking lot, which is proposed in town facilities. At that point in time, it has to trigger that portion of your grant that you're asked for and we're granted exception. The grant set or the generator set for the community center will be a smaller generator pack that will power as much as the lights and HVAC system. It'll set about where the telephone junction box is, just off 3rd Street. It's not because it's not run particular structure so much as the server. So it is only used for storm shelter. It does not have to meet the parameters of so much security network to it, and will be permanently placed on concrete cabinets with their the operation when the event of the power goes out.
Chief, can you describe what it looks like? I'm trying to picture what this looks like.
So it's going to be a large brown box. I mean, it's nothing fancy. It looks anything exceptional. Most of the time, the generator set for this size of the building is going to be approximately 14 feet long, so about 6.5 feet wide by about 7.5 to 8.5 feet tall. After it's sitting on top of the concrete pad, it's going to be beige and black behind the outside. It says generator. Nothing fancy. Security fences are designed to privacy fences to just hide the obnoxious look of the generator set.
Right.
One over at the community center, which is smaller, it's just going to blend in and be looked at by shrubs.
The reason I asked is because the building I worked in had a Cummins diesel engine sitting in the boiler room, but this is a propane internal combustion engine.
Natural gas there, because like I said, yeah, it's not near as bad as the old Cummins. We have one next door that
It doesn't look like the ones on TV.
No, I'm sorry, I just had to ask that question, so, because I remember I did the oil change and servicing on that one at the school, and it had fired up, and everybody got kind of mad when you fired it, because it filled the building. Thank you.
Is the 32,000, does that, or the 128, I guess, total, does that include the installation and setup of these, or is that an additional cost?
No, ma'am, that includes the initial setup and cost for the sets for this project here. Now, the move part of it, we move to facilities for that would be a separate cost. We would have to prepare at that point in time, we would merge into the town center project. But the $128,000 that we have here is the entire running of the gas line for this facility into the this location and all the construction work required for it.
And Mayor, I make a motion to approve the hazard, I make a motion to approve his request, let's put it that way,
Yeah,
to cost $32,075.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Councilman Malat, a second from Councilman Bishop. Will the clerk please call roll?
Babcock,
Yes.
Bullen,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Straver,
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Item 4 on the agenda is governing body to consider Charter Ordinance 2024-02, Charter Ordinance exempting the City of Edwardsville, Kansas from first clause of KSA 14570 relating to bonds for public improvements and providing substitute and additional provisions on the same.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we call up the guest, we do have some electronic interference. I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know. That's probably you're online too. I don't know if we do something over there, we make it worse, or it's not related to that module. I don't know if you need to try or just proceed on. It's up to you guys.
It's okay for now since it's not,
I'll
or
have somebody look at it later on.
that'll be, yeah.
Okay, we will proceed on. This is a conversation from our Monday meeting. This is, we talked about the indebtedness exemption and the charter ordinance. And I think for clarification, and it was a great question that was asked, this is not about the Public Building Commission and that sort of exemption. This is about exemption in lack of uniformity in state statutes. And so I'll call on Tyler Ellsworth, our bond counsel, has worked hard and diligently on this particular issue and others as well. And he's given us a legal opinion, which I think we found probably was insightful. And so I'll leave it to Tyler Ellsworth.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to be with you tonight. As your city manager said, this charter ordinance is a continuation of the agenda item, a continuation of your discussion that I understand you had last week about options for financing the town center improvements and the different types of bonds that I think we discussed. General obligation bonds, which are backed by the city's full faith and credit, which are backed by property taxes, and PVC bonds, public building commission bonds, which we're not talking about public building commission bonds, but revenue bonds. We're talking tonight about how you issue general obligation bonds backed by property taxes, potentially backed by sales tax, one, to finance the improvements to town center. So we were asked by staff to look at how do we provide an option for the city to issue general obligation bonds backed by the city's full faith and credit without those bonds the statutory 30% debt limit that applies to all cities. Now, you never want to issue more bonds regardless of the 30% limit, but this provides you a tool. If you approve this charter ordinance tonight, it would exempt the bond that you issue. If you decide to issue it for town center, it would exempt them from that 30% limit. And what that does is you're not going to want to issue any more debt than you can pay for, but it gives you some flexibility because from the provisions here that allow you to issue bonds under this particular statute, the size of the debt issue that you're contemplating for town center, together with your existing $10 to $12 million of outstanding bonds, which puts you right out at 30% statutory debt. So what I see this doing tonight is through this charter ordinance, which makes certain modifications to KSA 14-57, it preserves your ability to issue the town center debt if the voters approve it later on. This is really just one step in the process. It's not committing you to anything, but it's allowing you the option to put to the voters this question of issuing town center project bonds to be exempt from your 30%. Happy to answer questions on that.
If I remember from the meeting last week, this would also potentially give us a stronger interest rate.
Yes, and I could have mentioned that. So the difference between general obligation bonds, which are as secure an obligation provides the city, versus PVC revenue bonds, is that general obligation bonds come with a lower interest rate because they're more secure. Because when you issue them back in the full faith and credit, you're saying to the bond investors market, we will pay you bonds. If it pays trading property tax, make sure that those pays. Now, it's incumbent on us as advisors, you, as staff, to make sure that we have plans in place to look at each year to make those transactions payments. But that's right, general obligation bonds are the cheapest bonds because they're backed by your
So how would that 1% sales tax figure in with this? As far as when you talk about real estate taxes, how would the 1% be involved in maybe keeping that real estate tax out of it? Is that a question that can be asked?
Yeah, it is. We got that actually under the city manager's office, but I'm happy to answer that.
I don't understand exactly what's going on. And, you know, I think the charter ordinance to me looks good. And going the vote to the public looks good to me. Raising the debt limit is questionable to me if you start saying real estate taxes. If there's alternatives besides that, then it looks pretty good because we're getting ready to fight a budget issue up here anyway within the next 2 or 3 meetings. I already know that's coming.
There are two conversations here. We're talking about any debt related to this project that you issue, no matter what, you need to go out for general obligation bonds. That was paid for the big project, okay? And that much money gets you to your debt ceiling. Therefore, you can't put any debt on top of it. Does that make sense? So the mechanism for paying that debt, what you refer to as that 1% proposal, are really two separate issues. What you're doing here in the charter ordinance is saying, hey, because they're not, these statutes are not uniformly applied, by using this master plan, if you will, and exempting ourselves from that particular regulation statute governing these particular issues, that we're saying we're going to pass our own regulation and exempt ourselves from that town center being a part of our debt ceiling. Right? So we're going to be a part of that. Again, we're talking about saying that we're exempting ourselves from debt ceiling for this particular project. And then your question was more about how to pay for that particular debt. The two separate issues, and we do have them on two separate agenda items. One under my report, and Tyler will handle and answer that, or he could just go right into it right now. But if my money, okay. He said you could do that, Mayor, how would you like to proceed?
I think that's fine.
Okay, please.
I think the manager did a terrific job of outlining what before you charter. So if we put that, the charter ordinance, the question of the debt limit aside, council members a lot about how do you pay for this and how does the 1% sales tax sort of hold its way into our budget. And so my understanding is that the general obligation, if they're approved by voters, they vote on a combination of property tax and the 1% sales tax. That's what will help you without that 1%. There's some Yep. By law, the way this works, if we go to the voters in November, they have to vote on whether we issue the bonds. That's the way the statutes work. I think it's the right thing to do is to have voter input on issuing debt of this size. There are two ways that we can accomplish voting on a 1% sales tax at the same time we take that ballot question on the bonds to the voters. We have to have two separate ballot questions is the bottom line. One option to do that is to have one question that's on the bonds and combine that with a 0.5-cent special sales tax, which runs for 10 years, and have a second separate ballot question on a 0.5-cent general sales tax. So you have two ballot questions, one on the bonds and a 0.5-cent sales tax and special, a separate second ballot question on a 0.5-cent general sales tax. That's one option. The other option is to have two questions, but one question is just the bonds for town center. No sales tax in that language. And a second separate question, which is all about a 1-cent general sales tax. So we don't have to decide that tonight, but that was a nuance that I wanted to present and put on the radar because you have an existing half-cent special sales tax, we don't have the luxury of making an additional 1 cent increase to that special. So that hasn't muddied the water too much. Happy to answer.
Except
further
one
questions.
passes and one doesn't on
Yeah.
the same
That's right.
ballot.
Well, you did say though, you said, I think, you said that we were gonna have on the one ballot initiative, a half-cent special sales tax, which we already have.
Right, it would be an additional.
Another, yes.
Yes,
Okay, that would be raising that 1/2 to 1
right.
for one purpose, public safety, or
It would be for the purpose of town center.
you can earmark half of that one, and if it was a new one, earmark that for new buildings.
Right, yes, but you would still have
Okay,
0.5% general that you would also need to vote on in order to get total aggregate 1 cent increase that would allow you the property tax reductions that were discussed last
yeah,
week.
I think I got
So our ceiling is 3%, correct?
Yes,
So, and so you still have a 1/2 cent
Mhm.
that you could go ask for if something, an emergency popped up, right?
that's right, that's right, yes.
Are these bonds for 20 years?
These would be for 20 years.
And
Yes.
so would the half-cent special sales tax sunset in 10 years?
It would sunset in 10 years and you have to plan to renew it at that point, yes. I think the advantage of the 2 ballot questions where the ballot question for the bonds is tied to a 1/2 cent special sales tax is that if that ballot question passes, you have at least a 1/2 cent sales tax that's guaranteed that can help you. The question with 2 ballot, the issue with 2 ballot questions is always what happens if one passes and one doesn't.
especially in the taxes.
That's right, yeah, especially with taxes. So you at least have that security that you have that additional 1/2 cent special sales tax. Question is whether that 1/2 cent general sales tax passes.
And we can't put them all on one question.
You can't put them all on one question. And the reason that I think you can't do that is because if the sales tax is really for this project, then it's inherently a special sales tax. And so we can't just, if we had no special sales tax now, we could put it all on a single question and we're good. But we only have that 1/2 cent sales tax of special sales tax. Yeah. So,
Could you, this is probably not a good question. Could you maybe recite a sample question on the ballot, like this, the city wants to impose 1/2 cent sales tax to go to
yeah.
public buildings, town center. Could you phrase throw a sentence together on what that would look like on a ballot?
Yeah, and it's a long, wordy sentence. It is, just off the top of my head here, the question would be something like, should the city of Edwardsville issue bonds in an amount not to exceed X million dollars to pay all or a portion of the cost of financing improvements to the town center project for police and fire and city hall purposes, and levy a 1/2 cent special purpose sales tax to be in addition to the existing 1/2 cent special sales tax for purposes of paying costs of the town center project and paying debt service on bonds, something like that.
And that would be a yes or no.
That would be a yes or no. That's right. It's always yes or no.
And then what would the other question be?
The other question would be much simpler. It would be, how the city of Edwardsville, Kansas, levy a general purpose sales tax in the amount of 1/2%, which would be in addition to the city's existing general purpose sales tax of 1%.
Could we explain why we're asking them to approve or vote on that on the question? Or do we have to do that outside of it?
I think the better approach is to leave the question simpler
Okay.
rather than put more into it. I think
Yeah.
that your educational efforts can say, look, these are 2 separate questions, but our intent is to package them together. For legal reasons, we can't include them in one ballot question, but really approving both of them, a yes to both of them, accomplishes the same goal, which is building, financing, and providing a sales tax that would support some of the debt service for the town center.
I saw Mr. Gerben shaking your head like this. Are you agreeing with what he's saying on the ballot questions?
Councilmember Lott, I do. I've been through a number of these throughout my career, and that this is consistent with my experience. Yes.
We have.
It's pretty new.
We bought used buildings. And it's a question that I think that is extremely serious, and that, I am so positive about trying to get new facilities down here that I want to make sure that it's perfectly clear to the voters of what's going on, because there are so many nasty rumors out there right now. But, we're in dire need of facilities in this community. I mean, we're working out of trailers, basically.
Sure. And you've been for years.
And I appreciate, the way you're stating it. So, it makes me feel much better. And I think if we could get that relayed out to the voters, we could probably get this thing passed and get something going on. But when you start talking real estate, you're hitting a serious nerve in Edwardsville.
Sure.
And I think that's why it's important we educate the citizens, that we're not just coming after more tax money, that it would really explain to them what's going on and why it's happening. Because especially with the rumors that are going.
Well, the sales tax is its own issue, because it doesn't even affect us in this room. It maybe affects me, $100 a year for sales tax. I don't buy anything. You go to Bonner to buy stuff, you go to Legends, but our sales tax revenue comes from Missouri license plates down in the industrial complex, and who drives through here and stops and buys gas and 64-ounce Cokes. So that's a selling point on the sales tax, and it always has been. So. But I appreciate your explanation of that. That clears it up pretty well with me. So I'll quit.
I think Mr. Mullen is. Yeah, just real quick. I know we're not voting on this today or anything, but for future, if this does come up, maybe we can get the pros and cons of listing like the half and half opposed to just listing the whole percent to see which one is going to be better for our city.
I'd be happy to put that. Yeah, I'd be happy to put that right. I think the pros and cons in a nutshell of splitting that up into two separate half cents is, as I articulated, the security of having at least a 0.5 cent there to pay debt service on bonds is packaged with the bond question.
Okay.
And that second 0.5 cent is subject to, separate vote, separate approval. The downside of including that 1% just on the general sales tax side and having it completely separate from the bond question is you can get approval on the bonds, not get approval on sales tax. And if you get approval on these bonds, you have to be ready to issue them. The voters are saying, you asked us, we're speaking, you will issue these bonds. So you run the risk of, we're on the hook for how many 20 years of debt service without anything to pay for the property taxes. That's not a situation we want to be in.
No.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
So on your information that you sent us with your letterhead on it, it says that we want to vote. I agree, the vote should go to the public, but it doesn't state anything in the charter ordinance about that. Can that be put in there, or do we have to do another,
That is a very good question. So the way the charter ordinance works, there are three statutes, 14-570, 571, and 572 that we would use if you put this charter ordinance in place. 571 requires an election. We're not chartering out of that. We're not touching that with the charter ordinance. That still applies to the city, and that's how we get to the election.
All right.
So by law, you have to go through an election, and we're not changing that aspect of these three statutes. We're only changing some of the language in 570.
One thing I'd like to just throw out there for us to consider is when we're doing a charter ordinance to exempt ourselves from a state statute. I agree the full responsible piece of it is how are you going to pay for it and making sure we have the money to do that. The other piece of that is restrictions are in place usually for a reason. And so it might be a good idea for us to consider when we're removing a restriction from a governing body, replacing it by a different policy or restriction and saying, okay, if we get a new revenue source in, whether that be elimination of a pilot or revenue coming in from interest from investing our funds, maybe we can discuss having a policy that automatically dedicates some of that to this debt service. And so again, kind of if we're removing a restriction from government, replacing it with our own policy restrictions, saying, hey, this is how we're going to save from, as Councilman Malat was talking about, keeping that from the property tax bill and adding a policy to dedicate revenue toward this as well.
Yeah, and I'll defer to your staff on that, but that's your prerogative to put, either modify an existing policy or put a new policy in place that would help people understand, you're taking this approach.
At least for a time, until we can make sure that that revenue is up and taken care of.
Yeah, if I understand kind of the direction, it's more about revenue streams, whether they exist now and or we add to them, and that we devise some policy says when these things happen and we receive this revenue, we dedicate it to this particular project, whatever that project would be, to pay for that, so then we can offset some of the tax burden that we do have. So that kind of frames that up.
I think so. I think that would just give our residents a little peace of mind in saying, okay, our governing body is exempting themselves from a state statute that says, here's your debt ceiling. And we're saying, okay, if we're doing that, we're going to replace that with a policy that's saying we're dedicating a certain revenue stream to pay for it. So it's not just going to be added to your property tax.
There are communities who are in a position that when their debt reaches this, should have that limit stayed in place, they could well afford to pay the debt. But the ceiling doesn't allow them to take on more debt, if you understand. I mean, they have the cash and they need to build this road. However, they are 30%, they're at their limit. And you might have heard some comments from the financial advisor. There are some communities that carry over that statutory limit. It probably flexes between year and year, depending on payments and things like that. And what this is doing is saying, we are exempting this particular project from that piece of it, so that when we do have the cash and we want to go build another road, 102nd Street, whatever it might be, that we have the capacity to do that, but we're not up against that particular limit. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. And then, like I understood what you're saying, is that when we do have these maybe added new resources, or we're flush, to use a weak word, and maybe in this, we dedicate this much money to pay this, to keep it off of those, as we said, these real estate taxes, these property taxes. So,
yeah, that would be nice to see. Maybe in the next meeting or two, an idea of a policy we could get in place for a future revenue stream to dedicate to debt to offset what we're doing tonight.
Okay. We can do it.
Did anyone have any questions or comments, concerns for Tyler or our city manager? And I get, at this point, if we're comfortable, it would be time for a motion. Is that correct? To move forward with the amendment?
I make a motion to accept the charter ordinance.
Second. We have a motion from Councilman Millen, a second from Councilman Adcox. Will the clerk please call roll?
Adcox,
Yes.
Mullen,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Malat,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
Shriver.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to item 5. Thank you, Tyler. Hearing staff presentation of fiscal year 24 second quarter budget process.
Mayor, thank you. Mayor, Council. We have Doug Gerber, our Finance Director. City manager's going to make the presentation, and he's going to use the word second quarter-ish. Because if you read the title and how we were approaching this, kind of a quarterly report, we're not through the quarter yet. What we're trying to avoid is just glassy-eyed giving you so much data with budget-related items in the coming meetings that we do have, that we thought we'd get a little heads up or a little jump start on this. And there's not too many more days in this particular quarter that will make such a significant difference. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Gerber. And he's got the magic page turner. Do you have to hit the arrow then? Okay.
All right.
Just wasn't ready yet.
Yeah, governing body, good evening. Doug Gerber, Assistant City Manager, Finance Director. I think the city manager set it up well. This is your second quarter-ish financial report, and I would also consider this the official kickoff of the 2025 budget. So we will come back to these numbers as we work through the 2025 budget, but again, it's not completely the second quarter, but close enough for our kind of work. So first two slides are actually reminders for you. As a reminder, when you look at what bond rating agencies like S&P or Moody's look at when they evaluate us on our management practices, these are some of the things they look at. And in terms of giving us a bond rating, one of those things is quarterly budget updates, including budget to actual performance. And so I want to emphasize that, not to re-emphasize the negative that happened in the past, but the bond rating downgrade, I think some of those things can be fixed by implementing some of these kind of really low-hanging fruit kind of issues. So quarterly budget updates. As a reminder, you saw this slide in the first quarter presentation. This is a 5-year comparison of revenues to expenditures. And again, you will note that out of the last 5 years, 4 of those 5 years, expenditures exceeded revenues. Not a good recipe for success for a city or any organization. So,
Excuse me, one thing. Okay, I don't see colors. Is the revenues on the left side and the expenditures on the right side?
yes, sorry.
Okay.
Revenues are on the left side, expenditures are on the right.
Thanks.
Oh.
We're probably like your truck.
Huh?
Bread.
Okay.
Actually,
So again, not a good recipe for success, but the good news is that this year we are trending in the right direction, at least to this point in the year. We're actually when I ran these numbers, we are 42% through the year. Okay, so we have 52% of our revenue and only 33% of our expenditures. So the city manager has really emphasized to staff that we have to be diligent in our spending, not overspend, and I think that message is getting through. And again, we are trending correctly, at least right now. So moving into the major revenues for the general fund, I picked out the top 5 major revenues. Could always add additional ones if you were curious about some of those, but the budget is on the left. Actual revenues are on the right. Councilmember Bishop. To date, for court fines, we've taken in $200,000, and that's 43% of our revenue. And again, we're 42% through the year, so that's a good trend. Franchise fees, we've taken in almost $250,000, which is 44% of our revenue, expected revenue. For county levy sales tax, we're at about 39% or $367,000. So a little bit off, but not too far off the mark. City levy sales tax, $205,000 or 47% of our revenue, expected revenue. And then property tax is the largest driver of the general fund budget. We're at $1.88 million or 63% of our expected revenue. As we talked about last time, that's a bit misleading because we get a huge property tax distribution at the beginning of the year, but it's still a good sign at this point. Moving on to the expenditure side, which is really where our focus has been, at least since I've been on staff. And you can see the numbers on there. The budgeted numbers are on the left hand, and the actual expenditures to date are on the right hand side. So administration is kind of the outlier here. Actually, they've spent 40% of their budget, so which is still less than 42%, but that can be explained, I think, by the high amount of reliance we've had to have on engineering contractors, the CPA for some of the audits we've had. That's really driven up those costs, but it's trending in the right direction nonetheless. Fire department is at 33% of expected expenditures. Police is 31. Court is also 31. Public Works is 27, despite all of the efforts they're making out there and getting stuff taken care of. And Parks and Rec is at 29%. So again, I'm optimistic at this point in the year that expenditures are trending in the right direction. Then the last slide I have for you is what's next. We do this, or I like to do this slide with every presentation I do. And two things I would say right now, and that is this is beginning the 25 budget process. Next time at your next meeting, we will go through general fund with you. So we'll talk about we will present some budget numbers to you and talk through those. And we'll also have like a 3-year look back and a 2-year look ahead. So we'll have sort of this 5 or 6 year budget to present to you for you to go through. And then the other thing that is on our radar is we need to begin, from a financial perspective, we need to complete the audit RFP and go out for request for potentially new audit firm, maybe not, but at least take requests for that. Brief presentation, a lot of information, and I'm happy to sit for any questions that you might have.
Go back to the, that one.
Okay.
What you're saying there is we budgeted on expenditures. We said we were going to spend $1,293,000 administration, and we spent $517 so far this year. Is
That's
that
correct. Yes, which is 40%.
Okay, that's pretty good, I'd say.
Yes.
That's good when you look at it this way. Fire and police, what are they lacking that they haven't gotten up? I mean, they're really budgeting. Are they lacking on supplies, equipment, manpower, or something that they're not trending up quite so fast? You'd think that they'd be up a little bit higher. Or am I just reading things wrong?
I don't think you're reading anything wrong. I mean, they're certainly at 33 and 31% respectively, and I also don't think they're lacking for anything. They're just, everyone is being more diligent about the way we expend funds.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that they weren't, missing out on some things that they really needed. But I think it's been in the past where it's been a little higher at this point in the year. So,
yeah, I mean, from a police perspective, the police department is down a couple of personnel, and so that's certainly factoring into that, and probably same on the fire side.
Yeah.
Personnel is kind of where I was headed. So,
Yeah, I think if we recall how we set the 2024 budget in summer of 2023, we decided that we were going to have 3 full-time mid-year hires. Those are put in the budget immediately. So they've been carrying that amount of money all year in that budget. So you would see, should we proceed in that direction, then you would see maybe a spike from personnel costs that would drive that up maybe close or just about on trend. However, as you're well aware, I would rather see us continue to delay that and shore up our budget, pass this particular budget process, and then decide as we move forward whether or not we want to even continue having those 4 positions, because it's also, I have not authorized the hiring of, in the police department, 1 additional person. And they do have people who are there's vacancies there as well. And so those are 2 pieces of it. So you authorize the budget and I authorize the hiring, and I strongly recommend that we do not proceed with hiring 3 full-time people in July, and that we continue to postpone any additional hire in the police department. And therefore, that's why the trend is their expenditures are lower.
Will that help the general fund get to a healthier balance?
Yeah, I think our intention is the more we know, the more we know. And with new finance director on board, we have time to really not even macro view, but micro view this budget and really solidify the more actual numbers that we're comfortable with, formulas and worksheets. And then we can give you an informed decision. We're not saying that you shouldn't hire these folks, that you've made a poor decision in any way. We based this decision, I was in the room with you, on information that maybe wasn't correct as it should be. And we want to maybe come from a different position, a little more confidence in what we're informing you of, and that you can make a better informed decision whether to put those particular positions in the 2025 budget. Therefore, I've decided not to authorize the hires.
It's an ordinance, don't we have to go back and amend it? if we don't hire them,
You authorize the budget amount,
right?
not the hirings. It does include personnel increases,
Yeah.
of course, but in the sense that's, I'm hoping to have, again, I don't want to overuse the word, but some consensus on that, but I've made the decision that we should not. And you can see right away we're healthier, and we will be more healthy come October, November, December, as long as things trend this way without those positions being hired, without spending that money.
Thank you.
Any other questions or for Mr. Gerber?
One more point, I mean, he asked almost somewhat of an
Oh.
ordinance-related question, and should we defer to legal counsel, we can certainly do that.
No, I think your answer is correct, that usually the hiring and firing is the city manager, the budget. You tell him how much money he can spend, but yeah, I don't think he was off base there.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item number 5, city manager report.
I had the sales tax piece of that in there just so we could go back and visit our last Monday meeting. But I think we have it. Unless you have other questions, it's certainly on here. So
No, I think the feedback that we got, especially from Councilman Millett, Councilman Millen, and just kind of getting some more information as far as how that verbiage will come about and making sure it's as clear and financially responsible as possible
yes,
will be good moving forward. Okay,
I have nothing further.
perfect. Councilman Adcock, do you have anything for us this evening?
I don't.
Councilman Shriver?
Yes, a couple of things. So I apologize, I don't get on the website that much, but I have to assume a lot of stuff is posted. Parks and Recs in the city have a couple of big activities. June 22nd, the outdoor movie kicking off the summer is going to be shown. Have to look on the website and it's hard. I know when school's not in session to kind of get that, it's easy to get to the school, but I'm sure it's advertised. And then there is a sale on the trail down at the boat ramp park. So, which is exciting. I don't know if you've had a lot of feedback, any calls, any registrations. Gotcha.
The update I would have for you is we used the Jarvis, which is a part of the Parks and Rec like web system, if you will, a notification system. And we immediately had over 15, 16, 18
Awesome.
Responses. We have registrations upwards of 14 plus. So tell your friends, your neighbors, everything, June 22nd, bring your stuff to sell at the Riverfront Park, sell on the trail. We're supplying
Big
the
garage
tables
sale.
and chairs. Yeah, it's really.
Oh, I think it's a neat concept.
We had rain during our,
Right.
We didn't have a lot of momentum for our community-wide garage sale. And this may be another option that stuff didn't get sold, therefore it's still in garages and yards or whatever. Bring it, and we'll have music and some of these other opportunities to buy some food, that sort of thing. So I think it's a great event.
Absolutely. Big community event.
Yes.
That's the key right there. So all of the staff, I think everybody up here takes time to make the comments, applaud your efforts, all your hard work, every director, every person that works up here, each of you in your own way. Chief Whittam, thank you for your research probably on these. I know you just don't go by something, you extensively research what you're looking for. And if this city is without power, we dang sure need our police and fire department and city hall with power. So thank you for all your research on that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Millett?
I'm glad you mentioned parks because I meant to the last time. Mike Martin just does a phenomenal job with that parks department, and what he and whoever's putting together for Autumn Fest is going to be spectacular. I think when they talk hot air balloons and the $20,000 award on a hole in one on Frisco, that's pretty cool. And he really works hard on that, and he's very dedicated to that. What else was I going to say? That might have been all I was actually going to say tonight. Thank you for your efforts on the budget. We appreciate that. I would like to see a few more. That's not my job to do. So thank you.
Councilman Bishop?
Yeah, if you get a chance, go out to 158th Street on State Avenue and go north and look at Pacer's new city hall. They just moved into it. I was there today, getting a permit, and it's nice. And they're building a splash pad right next to it too.
Oh,
So,
boy.
I mean,
Oh, boy.
lunchtime,
All right.
it's pretty nice. They built it a little bit bigger than what they needed, so just for future stuff, they said, so. I didn't ask him how much it was, though. I will want to go back and pick it up. That's it.
Councilman Millen?
I just like to piggyback off Councilman Shriver. You guys have done a phenomenal job in this budget, taking care of, so I appreciate that. I know it's not easy. It's not. Thank you in your presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Millen had one thing to add.
I gotta blow the dust off sometime. On Saturday, we're having what they call an old timers reunion at the community center for people that were kind of born and bred here in Edwardsville. And I just wanted to throw the appreciation out for letting us use the community center. And it should be pretty fun. We had one last year down at the park, and it was so hot, we suffered. But we had about 45 people that I grew up with, and that raised me and so forth. I think one of the oldest we had down there was 94 years old, Leo Mills. And then it went all the way down to some of my kids were down there. So it was real good gathering, and I just appreciate that that's going to be coming up. Also, we lost a person, it's a Lake Forest resident, but Reverend Ray Bailey passed away. He was very involved in the Kiwanis Club, and he was one of the pastors at the hospitals and all that. He passed away the other day, and he will be missed. I know a lot of Edwardsville people knew him pretty well, so thank you.
Of course. So moving things right along, I did want to take an opportunity to thank Chief Whittam and Mr. Mathies for grant applications. It is always wonderful when we can get funding from outside of Edwardsville to provide for needs in our city. And so every little bit helps, and that's very appreciated. Won't belabor it too long. I presented findings to the Unified Government at their meeting last week to represent not only Edwardsville, but Bonner Springs and residents throughout Wyandotte County. As you might have expected, some of the commissioners didn't love my presentation or feedback, but I feel like it was needed, and it was a really good reflection of how the community feels, and it was needed. It was needed to be heard. One benefit from that is bringing attention to the pilot that's charged to residents here in Edwardsville, and that's something that thankfully I feel like our council is fully supportive of getting that removed from utility bills in Edwardsville as it goes right into the general fund of Kansas City, Kansas. So I just wanted to give an update on that we were pushing for that, and hope to see some good progress soon. Have a great evening.
That's what you do.
You're one of the males that's colorblind.
Oh, yeah, man.